here, and we're going to take a look at Titanfall 2 as part of the intro to our Savage Cinema series. What this is going to be about is taking a look at video game or movie footage and how Savage Worlds would handle those situations. It's sometimes a lot easier for folks to see the rules in motion, if you will, and be able to understand fully kind of how Savage Worlds works, how the edges look, hindrances, some of your combat options, and then on top of that, just that narrative focus of how you can handle business without really worrying about the nitty-gritty of needing 1,000 complex rules. So with that, let's go. Titanfall 2. Okay, so first up, see the pilot fire, 3-round burst, maybe, whatever. Just probably trying to lay down. Let's say it was doing suppression fire, right? That might be a thing. So just taking that shot, it's really probably too far off. Or maybe it's just, hey, I'm going to fire a wild shot ass burst and just try to get to cover. It's more narrative than anything else. It's to be honest. So then when you see him hit that wall, and the wall is there, so that wall is taking a beating. But let's say for purposes of this example, we're looking at some standard numbers. We'll say it's the range, because of the weapons, is going to be short range, right, for those weapon types. So that's going to be a target number of 4, standard, no penalties. And for the pilots, let's just say parry of 4 and a toughness of 4, right? Just is what it is. For the armor, they're wearing, it looks like a light kit, so maybe a +2 for their body armor. Now, the thing to remember about armor is that armor also has a +4 for ballistic protection. So that's when your AP starts coming into things. The bullets start slamming into plates. Bullets, it's important to remember, that's a very specific moment. It's not anything else. And then, so we'll say that's a +2, so its toughness of 4 goes to a 6. And the wall, it's thick concrete, so it's still got some vitality to it. It is beaten to hell in a few spots. But let's go ahead and say it's medium cover. So that's going to take that target number for short range from a 4, and it's going to apply a -4 to the enemy shooting rolls. So now you're looking at having to get an 8 in order to just get a success. Okay, so that's easy enough. Because if you get an 8, you minus the 4, that's a 4, right? So it's an 8 or better, and then you're gonna, when you subtract that 4, you'll be able to get that. The interesting thing about cover in Savage Worlds is cover provides not just the cover portion of it, but depending on where you're rolling and how much that cover is altering that roll, the cover can become that obstacle where you're going to actually be able to blow through that obstacle and still deal damage to a target. Because the obstacle, that wall will also act as armor. And so for purpose of this, it's concrete. So it's going to be a +6. We're going to be generous with this. So that's going to take that toughness from a 4 to a 6 for plating, and from a 6 to a 12 for what is happening. Okay. So now you're looking at some significant durability for the most part, right? Under normal circumstances. Now this is a futuristic battlefield, so let's see what happens. So fire, incoming fire, and ooh, okay. So perfect example of sort of how the rules work. So you see the shooting roll, on a normal shooting roll, let's say if the guy was just standing there, that pilot was out in the middle of the field, that rocket comes screaming in, a 4 better would have slammed in and just detonated and blown them all to hell, plus the burst template, that whatever the explosive had. Let's say short burst template. I'm sorry, small burst template. But in this case, the rocket came in and it hit the cover and took the cover out. So that tells us that the cover applied the modifier to the roll. However, this is where it becomes interesting. So let's say that the cover applied that modifier, and then but the shooters still look like they rolled fairly well. So we're gonna take a look at that, and if they would have hit the target without the cover being there, so let's say they rolled an 8, 9, 10, whatever higher, and you get to roll that damage, and that's where the obstacle adds armor to the target, and you still have a chance to blow the hell out of them. So maybe you roll really well, you ace all the dice, and you can still kill someone even though they were using cover. Again, they had to roll exceedingly well. If they had rolled, you know, 4, 5, 6, or 7, no, it wouldn't matter because they would still miss the target because that would still be below that the base 4 threshold that they were looking for if the cover wasn't there. So hopefully that makes sense. So with this pilot, looks like the rocket came screaming in, blew into the wall, destroyed the cover, and I'm gonna guess it's going to represent a high enough roll to overcome the cover, right? The pilot would have been struck by the rocket had the cover not been there, so now we're going to apply that damage. We're going to apply the obstacle as armor, and we're going to apply the damage to everything else. So let's take a look. It's flying. Oh, faded black. So, yeah, it looks like the rocket hit, small burst template. And again, the throwing back, there's not really a lot that carries into the rules per se in Savage World, but how I would have done it, I would have said, hey, cinematically, a rocket comes in and hits the wall. I'm gonna throw your pilot back. I'm gonna upend you right to the edge of that small burst template, which is kind of looks like it would have did. And so that way, it's a little bit of sentiment, throws you down. And also on the player side, they might complain about it, but it also put in prone. And prone provides some benefits to the players, right? Provided they're still being shot at and not being stabbed at. You know, there's the thing. So let's see. That means the damage would have exceeded that 12 toughness. So it's, you know, let's say this rocket rolls a 4d10. One or more of those could have aced, and now you're looking at 10. An average damage with the rest of those. So you're looking at 10, 15, 20, 25 damage. So it exceeded the 12. Right, it met the 12. 4 more above that is 16. So if you're looking at rolling a 25 on with one ace and then an average of the rest of the dice, yeah, that's shaking and a wound. And let's say that pilot was an extra, down the pilot went. So there's an example of how cover works and how cover can turn into an obstacle, right? Because you still might have a chance of being struck, and so that cover becomes armor for you. And it sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. It's the nature of Savage Worlds. Let's keep going.
Of all the things I've seen on the battlefields of the frontier.
Cool jetpack action, 3 something. Okay, so there's an example of, say, pilot starts hauling ass, activates that jetpack that they wear, and while he's in that jetpack mode, he throws a device. Now that device creates an anchor point, and it provides a sonar of the battlefield. So GM probably said, hey, let's do an athletics check, jetpack. Maybe there's an edge like Born to the Sky. We'll just call it that. We're making this up on the fly, and kind of how Savage Worlds can work for certain settings. So with Born to the Sky, provides a +2 to athletics check. Athletics governs the throwing capability, so that's what I would have asked this player to do. Like, okay, awesome, you're going to run up. You want to boost up a little bit, maybe get a little bit higher angle so you can see some of the battlefield or a place where you need to put that sensor. Athletics check +2 because you're Born to the Sky edge. Throw it down. Boom, looks like he stuck it, and then
dominant force.
Right, boom, there he goes. Moving up, a little bit of hip hop over the thing. There's the sonar activating. You can see where it was doing that. So I would say that's a device that I would rule, and instead of random bonuses, you can also create things like this. I would say, hey, that device, since it's sending out sonic impulses and it's putting that feedback into your piloting system in your helmet, right, your overlay, lets you ignore. There's no chance of ambush for you as long as one of these is active, and it's not active all over the battlefield. So let's say it's a medium burst template. Or a large burst template is how that thing would function. So any enemies hiding or undercover within there, it would still alert you to their presence. Now he's sliding, pretty infamous part of the game where you haul ass and then you hit the super crouch and then you go into a fast slide mode. What's he going to do next?
Fast and agile.
Grenade up bounce. So the grenade bounced, but it went over to another pilot, it looked like. Maybe we'll catch up to what happens next. But now we see he's coming in, and where I stopped it, there's the initial burst of gunfire to one target and gunfire to a second target. So that's looking at something like maybe it was a double tap maneuver. It doesn't really specify. You can't go between targets like that. But the GM can easily say, hey, yeah, cinematically it makes sense. You boom, boom, and your second round goes off. It could be a rapid fire as well. Maybe it was just, you only see one round leave. So this is also an example where it could have been a multi-action penalty. So that first shot would have been a -2, and that second shot would have been -4. But maybe there's an edge that Titan pilots they're trained to, and it's part of that knee slide, which maybe removes the recoil, removes that penalty, right? Not recoil, but removes that negative penalty for maybe a -2. So the first shot could have been normal, second shot could have been only a -2. Again, it really depends on how the setting rules are set up and any custom edges that have been designed. But yeah, that's an example of multi-action, and it looks like he hit both.
Graceful, yet devastating.
Flying up. So there you go. So this is a good example of, there's 1, 2. So this would have been a gang up bonus, right, going in. So you're looking at, that would have been a gang up bonus. That was 4 opponents, but the pilot used his jetpack to kind of aid to his combat. So again, maybe that's part of the Born of the Sky, and maybe it's a +2 to any activity done while jetting, right? So in this one, that would have been a gang up bonus, and that gang up would have given a bonus to any of the Op4 rounds, right? And so it's a +1 to the fighting roll for anyone adjacent to that initial attacker, which was the initial person that got knocked in the face. There's a maximum of +4, but they didn't really exceed that. So in here, this might be an instance where the pilot went into using the jetpack, getting that +2 bonus to the fighting roll, and on top of that, just said, while we're doing the dance, let's do the dance, and goes into a wild tack, right? So that accounts for another +2 to fighting. So maybe it's a +4 to fighting. And that's a significant bonus in Savage Worlds. That is very likely a guarantee you're striking an opponent, and then a +2 to damage. It does leave them vulnerable. So that is something to consider when you're doing wild attack. It's not an instant win button because if you are vulnerable, anyone attacking you is now at +2 to come at you. So there's a little bit of give and take, but it's a good example of that wild attack. And again, that wild attack can be used with the multi-action, which is what this would have been, right, where he went through. He jumped up, powered down on one guy, or one soldier, punched the hell out of one of the robots, punched another soldier in the face again. So it can't, or it looks like he maybe stabbed the one. So it's kind of what we're looking at. So again, it's a -2, -4, -6, taking those 3 actions. But if you're in a wild attack, and then you're looking at reducing those actions by 2, so it's not too bad, right? And if the first one was able to use that jetpack option, and maybe that jetpack option is also coming down, maybe there's little thrusters or whatever, you could actually start reducing that penalty. So again, it's very cool, but you also watch some of these edges and how players can use them to their advantage. So you don't create an overpowered environment. But again, it's supposed to be cinematic and bombastic, and you're super sci-fi. So let's see where we're going from here. Oh, stab dude in the heart. So that was probably that last gang up bonus they were getting. That's how the augment relay plays out.
Sheer walls become flanking routes.
Okay, so running up the wall, and this is a simple athletics. Really, maybe the grappling hook adds a bonus to the athletics. Maybe the jetpack adds a bonus to the athletics, but it really is part of the cinematic narration of, okay, cool, I want to get in that window. How are you going to do it? Cool, I'm going to fire the grappling hook that every pilot owns, and then I'm going to move along the wall and run along the wall, and it's part of our training. Since athletics is a core skill, and maybe pilots some of their edges are required to have it at a little bit higher, D6 or better, right? Because it just represents the higher fundamentals of training, and they constantly do it. In the glass.
Pilots fight different.
Okay, so there he let off a decoy, so it's a hologram of the pilot after he fired, after coming down through that window. So I wouldn't say that was multi-action. I would say, coming off the battlefield, went and did the athletics to get up into the upper story of the window. Maybe he's looking for a VIP. Maybe they're looking for something else. And then it's another draw the action card. Or maybe even surprise the hell out of it. No one expects someone to come slamming through a window at full speed like that. But interestingly enough, there is a multi-action in there when he activated that power. And so let's say they talk about powers. Powers aren't always magic. They can be how gear works, especially in a sci-fi setting. And so now you're looking at a power, maybe summon ally, right? And it just summons a thing of himself, but it's an illusion, so it's not really summon ally because it's not really capable of fighting. So maybe the device just creates a mock-up that draws the attention and provides bonus to the actual wild card, or maybe penalizes. Maybe it does both. Maybe it's a bonus to stealth for the wild card, and maybe it's a penalty to the notice rolls of the bad guys, one or the other. It could be both, could be either one. It kind of really depends on how it's designed. And it could be activating that counts as an action, and so then that next action, but there's not really a role for it. Maybe there could be a role for it, but I doubt it. I would just say it. Probably like drawing a weapon. Like it's a quick boom, activate that, and then fire the round. And then you're going through the door. All right, fire. All right, so that was definitely a multi-action with a double tap, or even possibly a rapid fire, kind of based on how quickly it went through. So again, it's really how you're playing it out and how you want if you want the rate of fire to increase or you want the bonus to go through. When you increase that rate of fire, of course, you get to roll your shooting more than one shooting die to that actual action, and so it's a give and take. One way you're doing a little bit more damage, one way you're having a better odds of putting more rounds into people.
Experienced in deception.
Doing that, we're in the hallway. Oh, here comes Op 4. They're engaging in that Mirage. Come to the door. Okay, so that was a good example of what we were just talking about when you're using. He picked up that it was either an AR or an SMG, and it obviously had a rate of fire of 3. I mean, he did that. It could have been a burst fire, right? You listen to the sound of the bullets. It sounded like a 3-round burst on the targets. So that's fine. 3-round burst. That has its own thing. And, you're not using as many rounds, so that's the real big benefit of what's going on with that. And it's just kind of a set application of bonus and damage. Or you can go full over, and if you feel lucky and you want to deal with a recoil, and maybe you have a recoil compensation built in. It doesn't look like they would, but if you're taking that -2 to recoil, maybe they have rock and roll edge that also negates the recoil penalty. But then you're rolling, say that weapon has an RO of 3, so the pilot could say, hey, I'm going to roll, I'm going to go full rate of fire on this, so I'm going to roll shooting die, and my wild die. And then the wild die, of course, will replace, one of the shooting dice that may be low, or maybe not, maybe you don't need the wild die. Then you get the -2 penalty for the recoil, and again, if you have rock and roll as an edge, you ignore that, and so that's really where that evens out, and you start just being able to burst through things like that. And when you hit with the shooting dice, then you're going to roll damage with every shooting die that gets it, that sticks. And again, that's just, you're looking at significant amounts of damage that are coming at someone.
But what truly separates the pilot from all the grunts and machines
here it comes.
Is the bond between the pilot.
There's the Titan. So if you're not familiar with Titanfall, Titanfall's big thing is you go from first-person shooter, ground combat, to mech-to-mech combat, first person. Powered up, ready to go. Okay, so that's another example of how gear becomes powers, and you're gonna see, if you're not familiar with this, some folks already know what's gonna happen. So it's gearing up a power. Let's see how this power plays out. Comes an anti-tank rocket, slams in, didn't do enough damage, and here's how the power works. So that's a good example of trappings applied to the power of deflection, where it's just sort of sucking everything up off the battlefield. It's pulling in the magnetics of the rounds coming at it, and then in turn sprays them out like that. And maybe there's power points applied to it, or maybe it's a no PowerPoint setting because it's not really arcane backgrounds, and so it's just the modifications to the powers represents the training focus and how well they do it, and whatever, maybe it's a Titan effect, right, would be the name of the skill that's represented in being able to activate some of what the Titans can do. Blew the crap out of them. Another Titan effect, right? So that could represent all sorts of things with trappings. The slamming the ground and that damage going out, you're looking at it. There's a lot of ways of counting that as an attack of what's happening. I think it would be. I would say that would be Titans. Maybe a burst. Or a blast. Hell, it could even be a bolt, to be honest with you. Again, it's how your trappings apply, and you keep those trappings, and you keep steady, and you maintain the narrative and how you play it out and discuss it at the table. But yeah, there's a few ways of handling that. I mean, it really depends on, again, how that application is and what you're looking at doing. But yeah, it's only affecting the one target, so, Oh, there's just straight up going full ROF. The Titan probably has a recoil and negating applications to it, but yeah, that was just straight mag dumping with a, oh Jesus, that's a massive weapon. It's designed to kill Titans, so it's probably ROF5. So you're looking at 5 shooting dice on top of a wild die from the pilot. It's, whatever bonuses are being applied to from the Titan.
The pilot can only be stopped by overwhelming force, or an equal.
No. Here comes another enemy wild cards on the battlefield.
The frontier has been the only home I've ever known.
All right, so
For years,
the rest of this is pretty much like this could be an interlude, right? Afterwards, just saying, hey, let's tell a story of what happened here.
And killing us off if we try.
So yeah, here we go. Let's stop that. But again, that's kind of how it works and how an example how these things can play out. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. I'm going to keep doing these videos. We're going to go through video games and different movie action scenes and scenes with magic being applied. So we're going to we'll walk through powers and edges and combat options. Thanks. See you soon.